It happened gently, slowly, like the first delicate white petal of a rose, softly falling away from its brothers and sisters before you realise the flower has begun to wilt. Hayden had always been a joy to watch. A beautiful boy, he'd charmed everyone he came into contact with from the moment he'd opened those big blue eyes for the first time. People often commented on their unusual colour. Royal blue, Oxford blue, no, midnight blue. It amused me as I wondered what difference it made. No matter their colour, they were beautiful, kind eyes. They swam with curiosity, humour and genuine warmth, encased in thick, dark lashes. As a young boy, Hayden had never been short of friends. People seemed drawn to him, and he didn't discriminate. He held court over his eager followers with fairness and ease, never feeling the responsibility of the informal leadership that had been thrust upon him. When puberty struck, the crowd seemed to swell as girls fought their way to gain his audience. Tall and toned from his football playing and swimming, he grew his thick, wavy, dark hair longer and flicked it from his face with a flash of porcelain smile which made the girls weak at the knees. Of course, Hayden knew the effect he had on them, but it never seemed to go to his head. His childhood hasn't been perfect, however. There had been tough times too. I'd stroked his thick brown curls countless nights when, aged 8, his father had slapped his mother so hard she'd fallen against the kitchen counter and lain in a pool of crimson. Hayden had called the ambulance as his little sister stood shrieking on the stairs, her pyjama bottoms sodden with fear. His father had left that night, grabbed a bag and fled into the snowy darkness, never to be seen again. None of his friends noticed the shards of ice in his eyes from that day on. I could feel them there, though. They glinted like shiny scar tissue at the edge of every smile. Hayden is a good son, a good brother. He looks after them and for a long time regarded any male that came within breathing distance of their lives with terse animosity. I've lost count of the tears I've shed over the pain this caused us. Perhaps it's for the best. Perhaps without the pain and the apprehension, he would have been consumed by his adoration. Just after his 14th birthday, he plucked up the courage to ask Lacey Turner out. They held hands at the park and kissed on the swings. I remember thinking it was the most adorable thing I'd seen since the first time he saw a duck. Hayden loved ducks. He and Lacey stayed together a lot longer than anyone expected. They made it just past 16 when he found her kissing Teddy Bryant at the bus stop. I stroked his hair that night for the first time in 8 years. It took a lot of hard work to get him to trust again. He threw himself into his schoolwork and narrowed his focus solely on his goal, joining the police. I was proud of him. He wanted to protect people. He's always held rules in high regard, despite the gentle teasing of his peers. In amongst his schoolwork, I carefully constructed opportunities for him with the intent of rebuilding his self-esteem and trust. He was sure he must have done something awful for Lacey to have cheated. I was at a loss, unable to fathom why she possibly would. Lacey would realise years later that her own self-esteem was to blame and that the attention of another boy was just too much to ignore. Now in her mid-20s, she often thinks of Hayden and wonders about what might have been. I can tell by the way she likes all of his posts on social media. Hayden joined the police with ease. He graduated with a first from university and made his mother weep with pride. Now at 25, he is perfection. Of course I'm biased, but he really is. I watch him as he taps his foot in time to the music on his headphones, his strong hands clasped around his white porcelain mug at his favourite coffee shop. His dark hair no longer falls across his forehead, cut close at the sides with a fistful of curls on top. His eyes are still the same, even with the slightest beginnings of smile lines at their corners. Dark stubble peppers his chin, highlighting his strong jaw. He's waiting for her, oblivious to the glances he gets from almost every woman that walks in and out of the coffee shop. He's flicking through his Instagram, looking at John's Thailand photos with interest. I can tell by the line on his brow he's wondering whether he'd be able to afford to go this year or next. I see her before he does. She pulls open the door and steps inside, flipping down her hood and shaking out her long blonde tresses. I notice a flicker of annoyance on her face as she realises he's not looking. She strides over and stands at his table until he looks up in surprise. His eyes light up instantly and he pushes off his headphones, standing to give her a kiss. He clasps her face gently with both hands, and I watch as any lingering remnants of her annoyance evaporate instantly. After all, it is Valentine's Day. I'm getting ahead of myself. It's 40 days since everything changed. 50 days since Hayden bumped into Katie at a bookshop and they both reached for the same crime thriller. 43 days since I watched as Hayden slipped his hand into hers on their second date. 41 days since I first noticed the change in his eyes when he looked at her. 40 days since I watched as he reached out to touch her face, his breathing shallow and his heart pounding. 40 days since he kissed her with such passion and tenderness she literally went weak at the knees. 40 days since I felt the twinge of something unfamiliar and forbidden. 40 days since I found myself wishing I was her. It's been 40 days since the first petal fell.